Hi, my name is Nicholas. Welcome to this week's Yin practice. For props for today, a couple hard blocks and a soft block will be handy, and then anything else you like to practice with, like a blanket or something like that. I'll invite you to get started in any comfortable seated position. So if you want to sit up off of one of your props, then go for it. You might be sitting cross-legged. You could also have the legs extended out in front. And if for any reason being in a seat isn't working for you, then feel free to come down onto the back instead. And take your time to settle yourself in. If something feels a little fidgety or maybe you need a little movement before you find your stillness, notice the parts of the body that are touching the floor. Gently let them ground down. Notice the spine. Imagine a slight rebound here, a slight lengthening. Find a little space for the chest. Notice the shoulders. If it feels like they're shrugging a little bit, see if you can soften them down and back. If you have a tendency to stick the chin forward a little bit, then maybe a slight hug of the chin in towards the throat to help lengthen that back line of the neck. Rest the hands wherever they feel the most comfortable. Eyes closed, or find a steady point, something unmoving to look at. Perhaps you can just be for a few moments. Notice if the mind has started to wander, and gently guide it back to here and now. Before we set up for the next shape, check in and see if you'd benefit from a little extra time here, and you're welcome to stay for as long as you need. Otherwise, as you feel ready, you might find a little movement here. And when you're ready, releasing the legs, maybe giving them a gentle windshield wiper side to side. And from here, we'll set up for a squat so you can plant your feet down to the floor and start to lift yourself up. And check in with the knees and see if this works for you. You can also modify the shape. You can make yourself a seat with your hard blocks if that would take some pressure out. And for some people, the heels don't touch the floor, and that's not a bad thing, but if it feels uncomfortable in your body, then add some support there as well. The hands can stay down if that feels better for you, or you could do hands to prayer here. A different expression if that's what's calling you. Just like from the seat, let the feet ground down. Find a slight lengthening through the spine. Find somewhere comfortable for the head and neck here. And again, you might close down the eyes or steady the gaze. Notice the gentle flow of your breath. Notice the body in this shape. And again, if you'd benefit from a little more time here, you're welcome to stay. Otherwise, as you feel ready, you can release your hands down to the floor or to your props. Slowly start to lift the hips up towards the ceiling, starting to extend the legs. Check in to see what would feel good here. Maybe a little movement. You can sway the hips or alternate bending one knee and then the other. Mindful that there's no pain in the low back here or anywhere else for that matter. And check in, maybe you'd benefit from being up on the props, more of a halfway lift shape. You could also bend the knees as much as you need to make the shape feel more sustainable. When you do feel ready, we'll come into the fold and see if there's an arm expression that serves you today. So hands can be to props, the floor, the legs. You could interlace behind the back or catch opposite elbows. You can interlace hands behind the skull. And if you're giving yourself some movement to help you find your shape, do that for as long as you need. And then when you're ready, see if you can find your stillness. Noticing anything that comes up here. Noticing the gentle flow of your breath. Check in here. And when you feel ready, you can release your hands if they're in a bind and come to a halfway lift shape. Stretch out the backs of the legs, stretch out the spine here. Then we'll step the left foot to the top of the mat, step the right foot to the back of the mat. You can lower the back knee to the floor. And setting up for your lunge here. And take a moment to check in with the proportions of the shape. See if you need to lengthen or shorten your base. Maybe you wanted to take the left foot a little further to the left if that's better for the hips. You can also pad the back knee if it feels a little sensitive. And you don't have to have the spine lifted up. You could stay in a low lunge, maybe the hands down to the floor the whole time. Otherwise, you can bring the hands onto your props. You could walk the props a little closer, be even more upright. And one more option would be to bring one or both hands onto that front thigh. Let the hips be nice and heavy here. Make sure it feels like a pain-free expression. If you do need to adjust something or modify, then go for it. And if you feel ready to settle in, then do so. Maybe close down the eyes. All right. If the hands are on the thigh, you can gently release them down. We'll step the left leg back to join the right. And then we'll set up for child's pose. So you can take the knees nice and far apart, bring the hips towards the heels, and then slowly start to extend the arms and the chest down to the floor. And to see what this feels like, you can add a prop for the forehead or the chest. Maybe a little rocking for the hips to settle yourself in. When you feel ready to, gently start to lift yourself back up. You can come into a tabletop position. Make sure your heart blocks are nearby. And from here, we'll step the right foot forward this time, and stepping your left foot back. And again, checking in with this side, seeing what feels good for the hips, maybe a slightly wider base or longer or shorter. Patting the back knee as needed. And then you can stay low, you can come up a little higher with your props. This side may need a different expression, so listen to the low back, the knees, everything else. The final option to bring one or both hands to the front thigh. And let the hips be nice and heavy here. It might feel a little wobbly to close the eyes, so if it does, then find a steady spot to gaze at. When you feel ready to come out, you can lower the hands down to the floor. We'll step the right leg back. Your choice if you want to come to child's pose, or this time round you might choose rock pose, so a kneeling position. If this is too much pressure for the knees or the ankles, then you can make yourself a seat, or come back to child's pose like you did before. Either way, coming to find stillness as you feel ready. Checking in here. And if you're in child's pose, you can make your way up to rock pose when you feel ready. And from here, we'll set up for camel pose. So we'll do a few different stages. I would suggest having your blocks nearby. And we're going to come in from a seat. If you like to come in the other way from a high kneel and come back, you're welcome to do that too. You also don't have to come all the way in. You'll get a lot of the benefits from coming partially in. So for that, you might be using your blocks slightly behind the feet with the hands down on them. See what feels comfortable for the wrists. Fingers can point forward, out, or back. And then from here, think about lifting the hips up towards the ceiling any amount. No matter where you end up, make sure that the knees, the low back, everything feels okay here. You could let the head hang back if that feels okay for your neck, but if you go in and it feels icky, then come back out. So this is one place that you can stay. If you'd like to explore coming a little bit deeper, then you might take the blocks on a different setting so that then you can walk them in as well. Doing the same thing, lifting the hips up. And then maybe walk the blocks a little bit closer, see what that feels like. Again, mindful that it feels like a pain-free expression, that you can still breathe those long, deep breaths. We're about halfway through the shape, but listen to your body. If you need to come out sooner, then go for it. When the time comes, you can come out exactly the way you came in. So either walking the hands back or lowering the hips. As you're ready, gently making your way back out. And coming to your rock pose, and you can pause here. If you like more of a counter stretch for the low back, then you can come to child's pose, but I'd suggest doing the knees together. Child's pose is a little softer on the back. So if you're exploring that, you can gently come in and draping the chest, the belly on the thighs. And if the head doesn't quite reach the floor, then add a block in. Check in before you move again. And you can stay here as long as you need. Otherwise, we'll slowly transition down onto the back. You can get there any way you like, and if there's any stretch or movement you like along the way, then go for it. Otherwise, you might walk the hands in, come up to a kneeling shape, and then release the hips off to one side, releasing the legs out in front, maybe for a tap for the backs of the knees or a little windshield wiper for the feet. And then lowering down onto the back. Make sure you have your hard blocks nearby in case you need them, one for each side. And we'll set up for a twist. I'm going to talk through a one-legged twist, but if you'd prefer the two legs together, then go for that instead. Scooting the hips over towards the left, extending the right leg long. And then you can guide that left knee across the body to land, maybe on the prop, or it can hover if that feels okay. Check in with the left shoulder, see that that feels grounded, and maybe extending the left arm towards the left. If you like to take the gaze down to the left as well, then go for it. Find your stillness, find your pain-free expression. You can gently bring the head back to center and gently unravel the legs back to center as well. Scooting the hips to midline and then over towards the right. Your 1 or 2 knee twist. You can extend the left leg long and then guide that right knee across the body. Maybe taking the right arm towards the right. And check in, this side may need a slightly different expression, so make sure the whole body feels settled and supported here. Maybe the gaze down towards the right. Gently release the head back to center. And then you can unravel the rest of the body as you're ready. Scooting the hips to midline, maybe giving yourself a nice gentle windshield wiper side to side. And see if there's any last gentle stretch or movement that your body needs here. And then when you're ready, we'll set up for Shavasana. For your rest pose today, choosing any comfortable symmetrical shape for the body. I'm going to set up for a reclined butterfly, soles of the feet together, knees nice and open, legs supported by props. And see what feels best for you for today. And if you prefer not to be on the back, then maybe coming back to a seated meditation or even child's pose. If there's anything you can adjust in your space to make yourself feel a little more comfy and cozy, then go for it. As you're ready, finding your stillness and your rest. Gently bring your attention back to the space, deepening the breath to reawaken the body. And when you're ready, it might feel nice to slowly extend the legs long down the mat, and perhaps reaching the arms up to the floor overhead. And give yourself a full body stretch, wiggling the hips, the shoulders, pedaling the feet, maybe the wrists. And then collecting the knees into the chest, you might wrap the arms around the shins and give yourself a hug and a rock. We'll transition up to a seat so you can roll down to one side, maybe pause for a breath or two and come up that way. Or if you like, you might start to rock and roll up the length of the spine, mindful of the neck. You might do this a few times to massage out the back. And then when you're ready, coming up, and coming to find any comfortable seated position, and you can use any of your props for support. Settling the hips and gently lengthening the spine, softening the shrug muscles, keeping the back of the neck nice and tall. When you find your shape, come to stillness and take a scan through from the feet to the head, noticing. You can leave your hands where they've landed or collect the palms together in front of the heart. Maybe bow the chin to the chest. And thank you for sharing your breath and your practice today. Namaste. Thank you for joining me for Yin practice. And my name is Nicholas. If you have any questions, please reach out and enjoy the rest of your day.